Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm continuing my Venus through the natal houses series. This video I'm going to talk about Venus in the third house in your natal chart. So this usually gives a great ability and love for knowledge. So usually people with Venus in the third are going to be very intelligent, very well read, very much enjoying a lot of forms of intellectual study. So they can be very scholarly. Although with Venus here, there can also be a little bit of a laziness with academics because there's such a gift. So it's like this could be the person that doesn't necessarily study a lot because they have just like natural genius, so they just go and wing it and get an A, and like, but then sometimes of course they might be really unprepared because there's a real easygoing nature to do with all forms of mental expression and study and things like that. So there's a real gift for kind of like small talk. Usually people with Venus in the third are not going to be the people saying that they don't enjoy small talk, although if Venus is in Scorpio or something, then maybe that's true. But usually there's a real ease in like the day to day, like, meeting someone in an elevator kind of communication, or there's an even like enjoyment of that in some cases. And also, relationships with like siblings, neighbors can be favorable, unless, of course, there's like also Mars there or something. But usually it's like the day to day kind of small talk relationships or sibling relationships are pleasurable or beneficial, or something that they can really put their heart in. So people with the Venus in the third can really be people persons. People they're a people person, right? um and there's an enjoyment and ease for communication. There is an ability, like if you're dating them, they can be the ones to write you these long love letters about how much they love you. There's a real gift for writing with Venus in the third, and they can really articulate things in a beautiful way. So they're definitely some of the best poets. They can also be very musical with Venus in the third. They can have a beautiful singing voice as well, and they can really enjoy, yeah, like I said, reading, writing, speaking. They can have a beautiful voice or a beautiful singing voice, or just their voice can be soothing to others in some way. And so it's a great placement for all types of, working with people, or, yeah, like I said, writing. They can be very soothing to other people. There's a very, like, unassuming kind of gentle energy that comes through the communication, that comes through the voice. Like, it's, yeah, they can be really mentally beautiful with this placement of Venus. Now, another thing, because Venus represents love, and with Venus in the third, they can be more lighthearted in love. They can feel a bit more mutable in terms of love, meaning like it's not hard for them to love many with this placement, unless Venus is in a fixed sign. People with Venus in the third might even have a little bit of qualities of like Venus in Gemini, where like they're generally very curious, and so they can actually love people for their differences. They can love someone from a different background, they can love someone with different ideas, they can love debate and like um communicating with someone who is coming from a totally different place. They can actually take great pleasure and enjoyment in that. But there definitely is a mutable energy, or a more light-hearted energy and love that can sometimes be seen. They can also kind of have this feeling of like being friends with everyone, or like having like they can be more social with this placement. Now, they might have other things going on in their chart that shows more introversion, but generally with Venus in the third, we can see this from very early on in life, that like this is someone who just like says what they're thinking and like is more openly like, yeah, social, communicating with wide variety of people, and like the opposite of closed-minded. When we have Venus in the third, we're kind of like, we're open and we take pleasure in communicating with various types of people, and learning, like the learning that we're going to see here is not as specialized, it's like they want to know a little bit about everything and they take pleasure in that. And so they might not necessarily, with Venus in the third, develop a talent for one thing. They might be multi-talented, they might be so multifaceted, and maybe even a little bit scattered in realms of love as well, like I've said. So but there is a real beautiful lightheartedness, and kind of like it could even be a little bit of like a naive energy with people, where the Venus in the third house, kind of like your general approach to like your day-to-day life, and like when you're interacting with people in this myriad of ways, is like it's more lighthearted. It's more like seeing things with love. So you get like a real beautiful energy with Venus in the third house that comes through, where they're very loving people and they communicate usually in a very loving way. And there's a great beauty, yeah, like I said, with words and with the speaking voice. It's a very soothing energy that people with Venus in the third house have. So it really is a gift. The downside could be a little bit of superficiality with Venus in the third, because they can find it easier to kind of be all things to all people, and like they might not really have a solid sense of like what they love and what they value, because that could change in the day to day with new information that is given to them. They can change their mind, right? So we could see someone who isn't maybe as strong in what they value, or even their self-worth. It could be more fluctuating when we see Venus in a mutable house. But the third house, it's like they actually don't think about themselves that much with Venus in the third house. It's not like a selfish placement. So it's not that even ideas of self-worth is something that they really spend a lot of time thinking about, but it's like the solidness in self that people with certain Venus placements can have, you don't always see with Venus in the third. You see a more solidness and self-worth coming through the mind and one's mental accomplishments, but as far as like their body, like who they are as a person, sometimes they're not going to be as solid in that, unless Venus is in a more solid place like Taurus or even Leo, that could kind of ground some self-worth. But it's they tend to be a more flighty kind of energy, and so they might not actually spend a lot of time thinking about themselves, because they're thinking about everything that's in their world, that's in their day-to-day, right? And so it might actually do them well to like focus on themselves and self-love, and like knowing that they're more than just their mind, they're more than just what they can accomplish mentally, they're more than just their day-to-day social relationships. Like there's a whole beautiful being and soul in there, and that's where that mental brilliance comes from. That's where that giftedness with people comes from. It's actually that sacred soul energy that they have. So yeah, what else do I want to say here? So with Venus in the third house, they do say that the third house is indicative of sibling relationships, right? It can be said, or I've read this before, that like there's a past life relationship with a sibling that was a marriage relationship in a past life. So that's something they say about Venus in the third. So just a random thought there is, yeah, it could be that one of these sibling relationships is especially karmic, or there's going to be self-worth lessons or financial lessons. Usually there's more blessings with relationships with siblings with Venus in the third house though. But yeah, it can definitely show that the relationship is karmic, or kind of like there's a romantic thread carryover, which can be kind of weird or confusing. Um, but there's like a real like closeness and love for a sibling. So if we have Venus in the third, we see someone who can really love their sibling or be really close with their sibling in like an interesting way, that maybe this is sort of a like a past life energy being carried over. So yeah, the Venus in the fourth can show that there's like a more harmonious home life, but Venus in the third can also show that as well. Venus in the third can show that the upbringing, there was something like about the childhood here too that did instill at least positive messages about the child's mental aptitudes and creative abilities. So like you could say with Venus in the third that they grew up in an environment that sort of allowed them to develop some of their mental brilliance, or even artistic or creative abilities. So sometimes we can see the childhood was sort of better with Venus in the third or fourth house. So yeah, what else do I want to say about you lovely people? Yeah, the best thing about it is probably the gift for communication, which might not be something that they realize they even have, because it's just very natural. It's a very natural day-to-day part. The writing ability, it's very common to see writers with this, but it's going to be like creative writing, like writing about love, even writing about soulmates, writing about whatever it is that they love, whatever it is that their heart is in. These people can just make beautiful written pieces about. So that's a real giftedness that they have as well. There can be like a dexterity too, like they can be really good with instruments, or even like building things, and like creating beauty as well. They're just especially gifted in a creative sense with Venus here. So pretty much the only downside is, like I said, the superficiality, and yeah, it's not really the most like solid placement to have Venus, because they can be a bit flighty and all over the place and restless with Venus in the third, but it does generally confer like a warm energy field, and it's a lighthearted energy, a kind of a childlike energy, even with Venus in the third house. So you could say the inner child is active and alive here with Venus in the third. So I really like this placement. I feel like I mean, there's wherever Venus goes in any house, it's usually bringing blessings. But Venus in the third house is very noticeably like a blessing with communication and writing and speaking. So yeah, I'd love to know your experience of Venus in the third. If you have this placement, or if you know someone, you're with someone that has this placement, what has it been like? I'd love to know. And thank you for watching, you guys. Talk soon. Bye.